Before we start, just an announcement. Brother Fazal, he works for a travel agency called Ria Travel. He requested a dua for his father who passed away in Sri Lanka yesterday. Please do remember him in your duas. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannah and forgive his sins. And also, many of you will remember an elderly gentleman who comes here for a few months at a time, very jovial and talks to everybody. His brother passed away in Pakistan. He requested to also pray for him. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Today, inshallah, I'm going to be talking about some verses towards the end of Surah Al-Qasas. They talk about a person whose name was Qaroon. This Qaroon was from the people of Musa alayhi salam, as the Quran says. And according to some riwayat, he was actually related to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. He was his cousin. And according to other riwayat, he was actually, he had the same father as Musa alayhi salam, but they were born from different mothers. Different riwayat that talk about who he was. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that he was from the people of Musa alayhi salam, meaning he was from the Bani Israel. He was from the Israelites. But the problem with him was that he was a wealthy person, and because of his wealth, he decided to side with the wealthy and the more powerful side, which was the side of Fir'aun. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us in the Quran that وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا بِسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَقَارُونَ فَقَالُوا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to Fir'aun, Haman and Qaroon, but they all said that he was a kadhab and a sahir, a liar and a magician. So Allah says that he was sent, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was sent specifically to these kinds of people, Fir'aun, Haman and Qaroon, even though, like I said, Qaroon was from the people of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, but he became astray and sided with the people of Fir'aun. According to biblical traditions, the name of Qaroon is Kohra, and he was also, according to what the Quran says, he was swallowed up by the earth. Inshallah, we'll listen to the Quranic narrative to see what the Quran says, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Qaroon kana min qawmi Musa fabagha alayhim. Indeed, Qaroon was from the people of Musa alayhi salam, and he transgressed against them. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحَهُ لَتَنُوءُ بِالْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ. And we gave him such treasures whose keys were carried by strong men. Meaning that, if you have a treasure and it's carried by strong men, that's a person who's rich. But not the treasures themselves, the keys to the treasures. The keys to the treasures were so vast and so strong and so big, or so many, they had to be carried by strong men. So when the keys are like this, you can imagine how much treasure and how much money this person had. So his people said to him, gave him some advice. And this advice is actually for anybody who has any type of money, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him some kind of status. These are the things that are golden pieces of advice that we should all keep in mind. Many people, they assume that wealth is evil. And it can be evil if a person does not fulfill the right of that wealth. If a person is not earning it in the right way and he is not spending it in the right way, then it can be regarded as evil. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about those people that just accumulate wealth and do not give zakat on it, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Those people that accumulate gold and silver and do not spend it in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give them the news of a painful punishment. What is the painful punishment? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا, that gold and silver is going to be basically melted down, and they're going to be branded on their faces, on their backs, and so on. This is the punishment they're going to get for not spending that wealth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the Quran, He does not refer to wealth as being evil per se. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word fadl for the wealth. وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. Seek the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it's fadl, it's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can we say it's evil? And this is not in one place in the Quran. Throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word fadl for the wealth that people earn. So how can we differentiate from a person making that wealth evil and the person who is not making that wealth evil? This piece of advice is for that person, and we can gauge ourselves to see whether we fit into that category or not. So his people said to him, لا تفرح, do not be arrogant. إن الله لا يحب الفرحين, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like arrogant people. So one of the first things that happens to a person when he becomes wealthy is that he came from humble beginnings, and he was living on a very sparse income, on a low income, and then suddenly money started coming in, and that led to him becoming arrogant, and now he starts looking down at the people around him who have less than him. And this is the first sign of arrogance. He forgets where he came from, he forgets his humble beginnings, and he starts looking down at people who have less than him. This is arrogance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not be arrogant, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the arrogant people. Inna Allaha la yuhibbul farihin. This is the first piece of advice for the people who have wealth. The second piece of advice people told Qaroon were, وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the abode of the hereafter. So this is the second thing that we do, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the wealth. The purpose of our existence should be that from what Allah gave me, I should be trying to invest it in the hereafter by giving my zakat, by fulfilling my obligations of the zakat, and making sure that I do whatever I can to help the poor and the needy, so that it is being invested for myself in the hereafter. So seeking the hereafter through the wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. After all, it was given to me by Allah. Why cannot I give a portion of it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's like the father who gives a bag of candies to his son and says, can I have one of those candies back, please? And if the child gives back one, how happy the father becomes, that the child is actually thinking of me and he's caring for me and he wants to give the candy back to me. So this is the same thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the wealth. Why can we not use it for pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave us the wealth in the first place? So this is the second advice, seeking the hereafter through the wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that a person just takes all of his wealth and spends it in charity, and there's nothing left for himself, nothing left for his family. There's a balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to have. And this, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Bani Israel, that do not spend your money in charity so much that you have nothing left for yourself. We are a medium ummah. We tread the middle path. We don't go to extremes either way. So, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. The third piece of advice is that remember to use that same wealth to fulfill your own worldly needs too, to fulfill the needs of your family. It's not that you spend everything in charity. So this was the third piece of advice. وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And do ihsan, do good just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did good to you. So what's the difference between this and the second piece of advice, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that seek the abode of the hereafter? Ihsan is above and beyond the obligations. So a person has fulfilled his zakat, he's fulfilled all of his responsibilities in terms of the obligations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, but on top of that, he does more good to people. He gives more in charity, even though he is not legally or Islamically liable to do that. He's not obligated to do that, but he does that. This is called ihsan. And also ihsan could be that a person, people give him a hard time, and this happens among so many relatives, that relatives give you a hard time, and then when the time comes for them, when they're needy, they ask you for a handout, they ask you for some help. At that point you can have sweet revenge and say, well, what about the time when you gave me this? You were giving me a hard time for so many years, and now you expect me to turn around and help you in your time of need, go away from here. I'm not going to help you. But at that time, to do good to that person, that's ihsan. That is, even though he may not deserve it, but you do good to him, this is ihsan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَحْسِن كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. Make ihsan to people, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored you, make ihsan to the people. وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And do not spread corruption on the earth. And this is one of the first and foremost things that happens to many people, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them wealth, they use that wealth for the haram activities. They spend it on haram, consumption of haram. And all kinds of wrong things are done when a person has wealth. And we hear all of these horror stories about these princes that go from the Middle East and they spend in casinos millions in one night. We hear these things all the time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is fasad, this is corruption. To use the wealth in these illicit ways, this is a wrong thing to do. Inna Allah la yuhibbul mufsideen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the people who spread this type of corruption. So these pieces of advice are for those people that have wealth. Okay? I won't count them again. Hopefully you remember all of them, because I have many ayat to go yet. So the point is that if a person fulfills the right of the wealth and follows these steps, he is on the right path. And then that wealth becomes fadl for him. And if he is not, then that wealth is evil. And he is doing wrong with the wealth that Allah gave him. So what was the response of Qaroon? Qaroon says, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. The wealth that I have, it was given because of my knowledge. Okay? Many people, when they start getting the wealth, their business is flourishing, they say that I'm very smart. I had the right business plan. I planned everything out good, and because of that, I'm making a killing and I'm making a lot of money. It's because of my knowledge. And this statement is actually very powerful, because it goes against all of the pieces of advice that were given to him. Firstly, the statement, it reeks of arrogance. He's showing arrogance by saying that it's because of me that I got the wealth. Secondly, it means that if I got it because of my knowledge, why should I give it to anybody else? Why should I spend it in the path of Allah? Why should I make ihsan to other people? And why don't I have the choice to spend it however I want? I can spend it on haram things if I want, because I got it from my knowledge. So this statement, this small statement, it goes against all of the other pieces of advice that were given to him. So you don't even need to count everything off. That statement basically says it all, that I've been given it because of my knowledge. And another meaning of the same statement is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to me because He knows that I deserve it. That's another meaning. Because He loves me and because He favors me, that's why He gave it to me. So that's another sentiment that many people have, is that if Allah has given me wealth, that means He loves me. And that's not necessarily the reason that Allah gives a person wealth. We have so many examples. Qaroon himself, who were given wealth, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was displeased with them. Fir'aun was also very rich and very powerful, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was displeased with him. So having wealth is not necessarily a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with a person. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَهْلَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنَ الْقُرُونِ مَنْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُ قُوَّةً وَأَكْثَرُ جَمَعًا. Did he not see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed many generations that came before him, that had more wealth than him, that had more power than him, and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them. وَلَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذُنُوبِهِمُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. And the criminals are not asked about their sins. So what does this last statement mean? That the last person you ask about the crime is the criminal himself. The criminal will always try to justify his actions in some way or the other. Or he might say that I'm innocent. So we have many people, for example, who serve life sentences for murdering many, many people. But they have a huge fan base. Why? Because the fans, they think, for example, first of all, they think that maybe he's innocent. Secondly, they think that he has some kind of excuse, and they start interacting with that person, even exchanging letters, sending letters to each other. And on many occasions, women go and marry these criminals in prison. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the last person that you need to ask about their crime are the criminals themselves, because they will always whitewash it and they will try to justify their actions. So in this case also, Qaroon is not the one that should be asked or would be asked about his crime. His actions basically speak louder than words. So what happened to Qaroon? فَخَرَجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فِي زِينَتِهِ. He came out in front of his people in all of his luxury, in all of his beauty, with his army and his horses and laden with jewelry and everything. And the people that were desirous of a worldly life, what did they say? قَالَ الَّذِينَ يُرِيدُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا يَا لَيْتَ لَنَا مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ قَارُونَ. We wish that we could have what Qaroon has been given. This is exactly what happens to all of us, right? If somebody sees a nice car pulling into the driveway of the parking lot of the masjid, immediately we wonder who this person is, and we wish that we could have the same car. Or if we go to somebody's house and it's very palatial and a huge mansion, we wish that we could have the same thing. And this was exactly what happened to the people that saw the wealth of Qaroon. They said that we wish that we could have what Qaroon was given. إِنَّهُ لَذُو حَظٍ عَظِيمٍ. He has a huge share. Allah gave him a lot, he has a huge share. We wish we could have the same thing. But the people who have knowledge, what did they say? وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ وَيْلَكُمْ ثَوَابُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَلَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. The people of knowledge, they said that alas, for you, the thawab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reward of Allah is better for those people that have iman and they do good deeds, and this was only given to those people that have sabr. Sabr basically, it is a very loaded word. It has a lot of meaning. Sabr means steadfast upon obedience. It means to stay away from sins, to be patient at the time of adversity. All of these things, they qualify as sabr. And having all of these qualities makes a person sabir, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about that person, Inna Allaha ma'a sabirin. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the people who have sabr. Many people just assume that sabr is that if you have difficulty, then you are patient, that is sabr. But sabr is much, much broader than that. It is to be steadfast, to stay away from sin, and to remain patient in adversity. All of these things combined are sabr, according to the definition given by the scholars. So the person who recognizes that the wealth is a temporary thing, he recognizes that the real abode is the abode of the hereafter, are the people that have this true sabr. So what happened to him? This Qaroon. فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. We sucked him and his whole house and his belongings into the earth. And there's no detail in the Quran itself as to when that happened. But according to the Israeli riwayat, Qaroon actually escaped with the Israelites when they ran away from Fir'aun. But then Qaroon, he took a bunch of men, 250 men, and tried to conspire against Musa alayhi salam after escaping from Fir'aun. And it was at that point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swallowed him and his abode completely into the ground. So, فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we sucked him and his house into the earth. I'm not sure if you know that these kinds of things happen a lot in Florida. Sinkholes. Have you heard of sinkholes? That these basically, suddenly, a huge hole appears in the earth and it goes down hundreds and hundreds of feet. And people basically get sucked into it. Whole houses, property, cars, basically, they disappear into it and you can't even find those things anymore. So we see examples of that even to this day. So Allah says that the same thing happened to Qaroon. Allah says, فَمَا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ فِئَةٍ يَنْصُرُونَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُنْتَصِرِينَ. Nobody could help him at that time. No army could help him when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decided to do this with him. Now the people that were wishing that they could be like Qaroon yesterday, what are they saying today? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ يَقُولُونَ وَيْكَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَيَقْدِرُ لَوْلَا أَمَّنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا لخسف بنا وكأنه لا يفلح الكافرون. Those people that were yesterday wishing to be in the place of Qaroon, they started saying that alas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the rizq to whom He wants and He tightens the rizq to whom He wants. At that person they realized that really the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives more to whom He wants, He gives less to whom He wants, and it doesn't matter that situation, the financial situation of the person, that is not an indication of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then they said, if it wasn't for the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would have swallowed us too. لَخَسَفَ بِنَا. If we were with Qaroon, if we had his riches, if we would have sided with him, we would also be in the same predicament as he is today. So we thank Allah that we are not in that situation. وَيْكَأَنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Disbelievers or people that are ungrateful can never be successful. تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we finish off with the whole section where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declaring that the abode of the hereafter, تلك الدار الآخرة, we have made it for those people that do not wish to have any ulu, any arrogance in this world, and do not spread corruption in this world. So if you want the abode of the hereafter, we cannot be arrogant in this world. We cannot spread corruption in this world. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The final abode, the end, meaning the successful end, is for the people who have taqwa. So that is the thing that we need to strive for. Whether we are rich or whether we are poor. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with wealth, we need to use the wealth according to the advice that was given here. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us wealth, we should be patient with what Allah has given us and try to live within the means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us, understanding that if we continue to live our life in honesty and abstaining from haram earnings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved a place for us in the hereafter. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The real end, the good end, is for the people of taqwa. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tawfiq to understand and practice what has been said and heard.